Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. I'm Glenn Keller, and in this video we are going to be walking through working with file data a little bit more intensely. In previous videos we had talked about just a simple overview on making an attachment to another object and looking at a quick download. Maybe we investigated the replace file function just a hair, but in this one we're going to go a little deeper with it and talk about different types of files that are in the system and really how they're stored and how you could interact with those files. So in Active Workspace, I've got this set up here. If I go into my Explorer again is kind of like that home page, and you can see I have different sets of data in here. So there are two concepts. In Active Workspace, files are essentially files, but what they are things like PDF, Word documents, Excel documents, text documents, CAD documents, so things like UG Master and Direct Model Datasets, those types of things. So a file in Teamcenter terms is essentially a data set. So a data set is kind of like what's in the database. It's what you see. But a data set is actually broken up into two things. So a data set is actually what you see in Active Workspace, AWC, the Active Workspace Client. And then also the file stored. Now, it's stored in what's called a volume, which is essentially just a folder location on a server. But there are two components here. So when I look at a file in the system, I'm looking at the data set. When I download the file and I actually work with the file in an application or through an integration, that's the file. Now, the reason that's important is when I come into an object that has a data set, like this object here, the data set itself in the table has its own attributes. So the data set was created at a certain time. The data set is attached to the object in a certain way. But the file itself has a different set of metrics. So it contains data. It's the PDF, the Word doc, the CAD data. And those attributes on that file are different and could be interpreted by another system. So files, there are a lot of different types of files in the system. Files can be downloaded, the file itself can be manipulated, and then you can replace the file in the system. Now, if we're going to create a new file, let's say, and I come into my new stuff, and I do a new up in the corner, and then an add. Out of the box in the system, if I come in here and I do PDF, notice nothing activates. If I do Dataset, there's nothing here. If I do Word, there's nothing here. So in Active Workspace, by default, now your administrators can turn this on, but by default, you cannot create a data set without attaching it to something else, unless you get tricky. So in here, if I come into the folder under New Stuff, and I click Add as well, and I do PDF, notice PDF is here. So it's not that you can't do it, it's that it's where you do it. So if I select the folder over here and I try and create it under the folder this way, you don't get the option. But if I go to the contents, the table that attaches stuff to this object, then I can get the option to create a PDF or a Word document. So here's MS Word X versus older formats, which is Word. You can create things like a direct model. Usually these are created by a CAD system saving into the system. Direct model, you can do UG Master, part files, whatever. Just note that you can also search for data. So if I come in here and I do a star cut star, I get a cutting head assembly, but if I filtered and it had other results that were of dataset types, then I'd be able to select those and add them to the table. So when you select a file, depending on the type of file, you get different options. So let me open up this object. And then I'll, at the top here, open up the attachments to the object. And you can see the attachment looks like this. If I open up other objects in the system, you'll see other types of data sets, such as my 090. All of these components have CAD data under them. And you can see this piece of information is the CAD data, and the CAD data has multiple files. So one data set, multiple files under that data set. So I can see how they're exposed here. But how Active Workspace interacts with them, when I go to the 3D tab, this is actually looking for a direct model data set. If you don't have a direct model data set here, which is a converted CAD data set, then you won't get the representation of the 3D component. So the data set, the file, is what's driving this and giving access to this data. If I go to Overview on a piece of information, then usually this Preview tab will allow you to cycle through pieces of information attached. So like this Preview, if I scroll through, it'll open up the file, which is the CAD data. If I go further, it'll go back. If I go to Attachments and I open up like a PDF or something, let me go back. So I take this object and I choose Open. Then if the preview can preview it, it will put it in here. So I can come in here, I can see the type of data set it is. It's an HTML data set. When it was modified, I can open it, I can download it. And depending on the type of data it is, I can mark it up and check it out and edit it. If I had Office integration of some sort or Adobe integration, I could open it up in those applications, make changes and save, and it would save back in here. Now, if I had created this object by mistake and I wanted a different file to it, I could, just like anything else, if I have permissions, choose Edit, Edit It, and I can say Software Config Report as the name, and maybe 2406. This is a document provided by Teamcenter, but if I come in here and choose Edit, Save Edits, it'll save that update. And then I can say this file is incorrect. And if I had Office integration or something like that, I could launch it in Office, make the change, and save it back. But if you don't have Office integration, you can simply come in here, and if you have permissions, you choose Edit, Replace File. Choose your select file, pick your other file, and then hit Replace. And that will update the file inside of the dataset. And then notice it also updated the name of my dataset. So just take note that when you update the file, it'll also update the name. If I go back now, you can see the references is that new HTML file versus the old one. So just kind of taking the concept of a file, what it represents, how you can see it, how you can download it, replacing the file, and how you can attach it to another object. So stay tuned for Office integration tutorials and other fun interactions with files inside of this client. But for now, I think this gives us a little bit of a good starting point to begin to work with the data we need to.